Hi friends, and welcome back to MV Stories. Today we'll look at a few Reddit stories, and if you like them, you can like, comment, and turn on notifications so you don't miss new videos. Today's story comes from the the A-hole subreddit. It was posted by Vizeria127 and was titled, the A-hole, I don't want custody of my sister's 3 kids. I, 29 female, have 1 kid, 11 female. My sister, 32 female, has 3 kids, 11 female, 8 female, 6 female. The oldest is also autistic. About 3 years ago, my sister lost custody of her kids. The girls were split up in the system for a little over a year before our mom, 52 female, got custody 2 years ago. Over the last 2 years, the girls have been really thriving. They're happy, healthy, doing well in school. Recently, my mom got some unexpected health issues that are severely impacting her mobility and energy. There is no cure. She called me last week to ask if I would take the girls, so they aren't split up in the system again. My heart sank. I love my nieces. There's no denying that. And my daughter loves her cousins. The kids all get along great. They live on the opposite side of the country, but I visit whenever possible. I'm always planning all sorts of activities and experiences for them, and encouraging them to pursue the things they love. The oldest loves art, the middle child loves gymnastics, and the youngest loves Pokemon and video games. I plan things we can all do together, and I make sure they each get one-on-one time too. I would die for these girls, but I just don't have the means to care for them full-time. My husband and I are considered a low-income family. After a decade of saving, we finally bought a small 2-bed townhouse, but there's barely enough room for the 3 of us, let alone another 3 kids too. I suggested my mom move closer so I can help more day to day, but she shot that down rather quickly. Her reasons were she didn't want to pull the kids out of their current school. But I guess it's okay if I do, and with her health issues, she didn't want to have to find a new doctor. That one is pretty valid. There's a serious healthcare crisis in my country. Us moving closer to them is not an option. We would both have to find new jobs, and my husband's current job has really good benefits we can't afford to lose. My mom is retired, so the only thing tying her to her current location is her doctor. My heart is breaking. I don't want to lose my nieces to the system again. I love the relationship we have, but I don't see how I could sustainably take on the 3 of them full-time. My mom and my sister have been calling me heartless and that I haven't fully thought it through, but I have. I've been thinking about it every day for over 3 years when my sister first lost custody. Edit. Oh wow, I already can't keep up with the comments, so I'm going to address a couple questions here. The dad is not in the picture. He has 2 other kids from 2 other women that he also walked out on. My sister is on drugs and living in a tent, but it's got a great view of the lake. There's no other family that could help. My mother is also low income, and her retirement funds barely cover their costs of living as is, but I will definitely be looking more into other resources and government funding. Thank you to those providing actual helpful advice and suggestions. I am not in the United States. Relevant comments. Commenter 1 says, why can't the sister regain custody at this point? It's been years. Opie replied, she hasn't given up the drugs yet. Commenter 2 says, someone who lost custody of her kids doesn't get to have an opinion about my parenting choices. Where's the dad? Because he let them down, not you. Time to be honest. Opie replied, the dad is a deadbeat with 2 other kids from 2 other women. Opie on her husband's views regarding the situation. Opie says, he works 60 hours a week with an hour-plus commute. He's barely home unless it's to sleep. At the end of the day, he supports whatever I decide, but I think that's because he knows it'll be me doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting. Commenter 3 says, not the a-hole. What does your mom expect? She's okay with 4 kids crammed together in 1 room to sleep in, 6 people to 1 bathroom? And the emotional fallout of the change, and everyone in a small space together, as well as 3 more hungry people to feed 8 declothe. Your mom knows how expensive it is to have these kids. How does she expect you to do it? It's entirely plausible to temporarily place them through a caseworker while the family comes together to brainstorm any possible solutions, even if the end result is still no. Your mom has to know that it's not like you hate these kids. The money and the resources aren't there. What is she expecting? Very cruel for people to dump it all on you and call you heartless. Not cool. I'm so very sorry. You're doing the best you can. Opie replied, "Thank you. It's been a very long-running pattern that I'm expected to pick up the pieces of every mess in this family. I've worked my butt off to give my own daughter a better life than I had. I would do the same for my nieces in a heartbeat if I thought I could actually sustain it." Opie responds to a comment on caring for an autistic child. Op says, "It sounds like you haven't fully considered the responsibility of taking care of an autistic child and how draining that can be at times. She struggles socially, but she's incredibly smart and likes being independent. With the right guidance, she's going to go very far in life. I have all the patience in the world for her beautiful soul." Commenter 4 says, "Not the a-hole. So your daughter would spend her teenage years sharing her room with her 3 female cousins, who are highly likely to eventually have behavior problems from their trauma. And the boy cousin would probably be sleeping on a couch, I guess. You can't do this. It would harm your child, and your primary responsibility is to your child and your husband. Your marriage and your daughter would not come through this unscathed." Edited to correct gender of the children. Opie replied, "The kids really do all get along great. Whenever we visit, my nieces say they want to adopt my daughter as their 4th sister. I get where you're coming from with the behavior issues from trauma, but my first instinct when my mom first got custody was to put them in therapy, and she did. They really are thriving now, and my patience knows no bounds when it comes to those kids." Commenter 5 says, "Certainly not the a-hole. If you ask Child Services to come take a look at your house and tell you if you could take in 3 more children and still have them thrive, I'm sure they would say no. You don't have the space, the money, nor the time to take in all 3. Your mother can't move closer to you, and you having just gotten a new place certainly can't move closer to her. I don't see a way in which this works without the girls getting taken again anyways. That being said, my heart breaks for you, and I'm deeply sorry. It's not your fault. Can you still keep contact with them if they're in foster care? Even just knowing that their family didn't give up on them would make a world of difference, I think. And what is your sister doing? Does she see the kids at all? Is she helping your mother in any way? Or is she out of the picture and just pointing fingers at you as the only person left? That doesn't seem fair to me." Opie replied, "My sister is not allowed to see the kids unless it's CPS supervised and she can provide a clean drug test, which she can't." Opie on if there are any other family members who can take in the kids. Opie says, "The godfather, kid's uncle, is dead. We all went no contact with the godmother, our cousin, after she married a pedo. My sister's only friends are just as reliable as my sister." Update. It's been a hectic month, but before I dive into the update, I wanted to address a few more comments and questions from my last post that I was just too overwhelmed to elaborate on at the time. I'm sorry if it's a bit long. You can skip to the bottom for the update. I've spoken to the kids' caseworker. She interviewed me when my mother was first trying to get custody to ask about my upbringing and ensure it would be a good environment for the kids. I reached out more recently to go over logistics if I were to take them in. The caseworker told me she thinks I would be a great fit to give them a stable home, but I lack the adequate space needed to be approved as their guardian. She offered to look into low-income housing options in my area that would be big enough, but the wait lists are unbelievably long. Finance. Yes, we would receive a decent chunk of funding per child, and twice as much for the eldest on the spectrum to help cover the kids' costs. But it's money that I would be spending on food, clothes, and other day-to-day necessities, not money I could put towards a down payment on a bigger house. That financial assistance also wouldn't be considered income as far as my MTG approval goes because it's money for the kids, not me. And when I say we just bought a small townhouse, I mean we closed a little over a month ago and haven't even finished getting settled yet. It also took our entire savings to do so. We are financially sitting back at square one again. Breaking our brand new mortgage, not to mention the legal costs and realtor fees, etc., is not financially feasible. We also received first-time home buyer rebates in our closing costs/land transfer tax, thousands of dollars, that we would have to pay back if we don't live in our new house as our primary residence for at least a year. The rent prices where I live are about twice the cost of my MTG, So even putting aside all those other factors, renting again still just doesn't make sense. The math is not mathing. If I could just win the lotto, my problems would be solved. Luckily, my husband has an amazing benefits plan through his work, so dental, glasses, meds, and even therapy are all covered and would extend to the kids if we got custody. All three need glasses, and the youngest has a nasty habit of losing or breaking hers. Caring for special needs. I mentioned the eldest on the spectrum struggles socially and with emotional regulation. She's also incredibly bright and appreciates her space and independence. I spent a lot of time volunteering with special needs kids when I was in high school, and I know how difficult it can be. My niece is not what I would consider difficult. She might operate a little differently, but it's nothing out of my scope. My daughter is actually very similar to my niece in all of these aspects, and as I said before, my patience knows no bounds when it comes to these kids. I'm also fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work from home when needed. I do have to go into the office a couple days a week for some tasks that can be handled remotely, but it's flexible enough that I can be home for emergencies, sick days, or even if it's just to go see their school talent show or something. My husband, on the other hand, has a very demanding job. It's impossible to do remotely, and it's not something he can easily call in sick from. Even if I had a huge emergency, he would have to wait for his replacement to enter the control room before he could leave. Building resentment in my husband and daughter. I've talked about this with my husband extensively since my sister first lost custody. He knows how much I love those girls and would support my decision to take them in if we could swing it. While I haven't talked to my daughter about it, because I don't want her to get her hopes up over something that likely can't happen, I can say that she's begged me for a sibling every year since she was a toddler. She's had a really hard time with bullies at school, and her cousins are her best friends. She would happily welcome them all with open arms, even if it meant being cramped in one room. The update. My mom and nieces are currently visiting me. We're camping just outside my city, and we seem to have found our compromise. My mom is going to take the year to scrape together what money she can for a down payment to move closer to me. She's also going to ask her doctor about referrals to a doctor in my city. In the meantime, I've offered to take the girls during major school breaks, summer, spring break, and Christmas. The house will still be very cramped during those weeks, but we spend the majority of the summer camping anyway, so the tight quarters aren't for very long periods of time. My husband, I truly don't know what I did to deserve him, has offered to work as much overtime as he's allowed to help us replenish our savings and hopefully get a bigger place when it's time to renew our mortgage. My work won't let me do any overtime. On a totally unrelated note, does anyone have any advice or insight on how to get into selling feet pics? Asking for a friend. My sister found my original post and has been blowing up my phone with nasty texts and voice messages. She even made some wild Facebook posts about what a traitor of a sister I am. I simply don't have the energy to listen to her 2 cents on the matter, so I'm ignoring her on all fronts. We definitely can't take custody anytime soon, but we haven't shut down the possibility of taking them in the future when it makes more sense. I think this possibility is what's keeping my mother cooperative for the time being. This will likely be the last update unless the plan for my mom's move next year craps out. Knock on wood. Thank you to everyone that gave genuinely helpful advice and support. Time to go swimming. Top comments. Downvoted commenter says, renew your mortgage? A mortgage is a loan to purchase a home that is 15 to 30 years. Do you mean a lease? A lease renews yearly. Your sister should be thanking you for trying to take care of her children. You didn't take away her custody. Why does she think you're a traitor? Makes no sense. Opie replied, our mortgage is 30 years, but it get renewed every 3 years. Commenter 1 says, depending on where Opie lives, mortgages can be renewed every few years, e.g. take advantage of better interest rates, switch from fixed to variable, etc. Opie replied, yes, this is how it works where I live. Commenter 2 says, are you going to this over the kids' heads? If this angers you, don't help them. It sounds like you're more concerned about money. You don't break a mortgage. You sell for more or rent it out for income. Kids need to know they're more important than money. Opie replied, I'm not more concerned about money than the kids. Money was the one thing everyone stressed in my original post, so I elaborated here to provide clarity. Yes, money is a big factor, but the anger you sense here is you projecting. Where I live, selling or paying out your mortgage before the term is up is called breaking the MTG, and it comes with very large prepayment penalty fees. As I mentioned in my post, that's not feasible at the moment. Commenter 3 says, careful about the first-time home buyer rebate. Many people found out the hard way it was a loan, and they had to pay it back. Opie replied, the first-time home buyer rebate isn't a loan. If they had to pay it back, then they either weren't a first-time home buyer or they didn't live in it as their primary residence for at least a year. Commenter 4 says, your sister can kick rocks. You are handling this in the best way you can. Far better than me. I wouldn't be able to do this for my sister, and only one of her kids is a minor. Because it just wouldn't be feasible since I can barely care for myself, and I have to keep an eye on my father, brain damage, and just overall declining health. Your sister should be grateful that you and mom are doing your best to find a way to make this work as soon as possible. People like your sister need to learn that not everyone can drop everything and take in family that they can't afford / don't have room for / jobs, don't allow for flexibility / can't physically or mentally handle it, especially when it's children. Commenter 5 says, not the a-hole. Best possible outcome. It takes a village. Just make sure your husband doesn't overwork himself. He comes before cousins. The second story is from Oscorp's subreddit. It was posted by Fun Hovercraft 5881 and was titled, My CEO is harassing me and my family to stay after resignation. I am using a burner account because my real account could identify me and my current employer. I joined my current employer straight out of university 8 years ago as a software engineer. I was employee number 9 during their startup phase and received stock, which is now just under 3% of the company. The company now has around 120 employees, but only 6 of remaining early crew have stock options. Since the day I joined, I have always reported to the head of engineering. I have never reported directly to the CEO. Because I joined early, both my partner and I know the CEO and his family in a semi-work, semi-social way. The company built some innovative technology, has good income, but has struggled to expand because they lack the funds. I know the CEO/founder has been trying to raise capital or sell the business for about a year now, without much luck, and he has been open about this with the early staff. During my annual review last year, I asked about moving into a more senior role. My manager said the next role up was his, and he joked he had no plans to move. He did say he would support me if I wanted to apply for more senior roles outside the company, because he believed I had the skills and experience to step up. Around October last year, a much larger company reached out to me with a more senior role. After a few interviews, it became clear they were looking to build a competing product to my current employer. I eventually received a provisional offer in January. They reviewed my contract and confirmed I do not have a non-compete. This was also confirmed by my manager and HR at my current employer. They completed the reference check with my manager and said they got a stellar reference. I received the formal offer, accepted it, and resigned last Thursday. The next day, the CEO messaged me asking for a call, where he requested that I postpone my end date to mid-May. I'm not working on any time-critical projects. When I asked my manager, he said he was also asked to try to convince me to stay until mid-May. The CEO and my manager mentioned my stock options, which will be forfeited if I leave. I already knew this, but given the state of the company, I'm not concerned about losing them, as there is no realistic chance to sell them anyway. I spoke to my new employer, and they wanted to start in March. They're keen to get going and plan to send me to their head office in Europe for induction in April and May. My partner and I want to travel together and enjoy a holiday over Easter while our living and travel costs are covered. Last Friday, I emailed my CEO thanking him for the past 8 years, but confirming my final day would be in March. He called me immediately after receiving the email and again tried hard to convince me to stay until May, again mentioning the stock forfeiture. Last night, the CEO's wife, who we've known since the startup days, called my partner and asked her to talk to me about staying until May. My partner felt very uncomfortable and ended the call quickly. Over the weekend, I spoke to my current manager, and he said that if he were me, he would try to push back the end date to mid-May. I also spoke to a family friend who is a lawyer, corporate law, and he confirmed that my contract does not contain a non-compete. He mentioned that the CEO might want me to stay because the business could be less valuable for sale if I leave to work on a competing product. I'm feeling completely creeped out by this. I still have almost 3 weeks left in my notice period. I am currently earning about $180,000, and the new job is $200,000. Relevant comments. Commenter 1 says, I would ask your lawyer friend about your vesting options for the stock. 3% is not small. Usually you would have a vesting schedule for the stock of when you can exercise your stock option. It shouldn't be auto forfeiture since it's part of your compensation, and there should have been a way to retrieve it. Companies must have a way to get your stock, otherwise it would be an unlawful benefit you can never receive. Opie replied, I looked at this last year. I can exercise my options for just over $100,000 in cash. A former coworker exercised her options right after COVID, and she is still holding them with no way to sell them. Also don't have a handy $100,000. Commenter 2 says, you need to speak with a friend in finance. If you exercise options, they become actual shares. It's an option to buy the share at a set price. You should be able to find out what the current valuation for the company is. You forfeit the options if you leave, but if you exercise them into shares, you own them and still own them if you leave. Commenter 3 says, why are the shares not saleable? Usually the way options work, you can sell them when you exercise the option. E.g., the company is worth $1 million, and they give you an option for 1,000 shares at $100,000. Years later, the company is worth $4 million, and 1,000 shares are worth $400,000. So you exercise your options, sell a quarter of the shares to cover the cost of exercising, and end up with 750 shares worth $300,000. Or you cash them all out and walk away with $300,000 cash, less tax. Opie replied, company is not public. No one I know is interested buying 3% of a startup/mid-stage company, which is 60% controlled by the founder. Commenter 4 says, definitely sounds like your CEO is trying to look after you and make sure you get your 3% when the business sells. There's no other logical explanation to me. I would ask the CEO to a coffee and just have a mate-to-mate chat and ask what the main reason for wanting you to stay is so you can make an educated decision. Make sure to go into this chat in a very appreciative way in terms of your time at the company, their support, etc. Don't position it in an accusatory way. Opie replied, CEO is currently traveling overseas and is not available for a coffee. All communication has been via Teams or phone. Commenter 5 says, you know the answer. You want to leave on good terms, but you also have to do what's right for you and your family. I would politely once again tell them no, and that your decision has been made. You are happy to forfeit your stock options. The future value of the business is not your problem. Opie replied, I have repeatedly said no, but the ongoing attempts to make me stay is making me anxious. I feel like they have some nuclear option they have not used yet. Commenter 6 says, Opie, don't fumble this. What's your company annual recurring revenue, net revenue retention, and growth rate ATM? You might be throwing away millions. 3% is a large stake for an early employee. Even if it sells for high tens of millions, it is still a big number. I'm also a software engineer, early employee, and have good relationships with head of English and CEO since the start. I'm not looking to move anywhere, but my options get forfeited only 5 years after my departure. Update 1. I have received a number of DMs asking for an update. Thank you to everyone who offered feedback and advice on my original post. I read all your comments, thought things through carefully, and discussed everything with my partner and family. Most of you suggested that I leave now rather than inconvenience my new employer or risk starting the next role on the wrong foot. My partner has been saying the same thing since I received the offer. After reflecting on your advice, I realized my current employer has been taking advantage of my loyalty, especially by not promoting me or offering meaningful career progression. I'm normally a very passive person, and I think this situation was the push I needed to finally move on. Over the weekend, I received another phone call from the CEO, and that was the final straw. When I asked why I was being asked to stay until May, he was evasive and non-committal. So, on Monday, with help from my partner's brother, a lawyer, I wrote an honest letter to the head of HR and copied to my manager and the CEO. In the letter, I thanked the CEO, my manager, and the company for the past 8 years of experience that ultimately gave me the confidence to lead my own team and my new organization. I also stated that I felt unduly pressured and harassed to stay significantly beyond my notice period, which could jeopardize my new role. I requested that they stop contacting me about the matter and advised that if it continued, I would consider pursuing legal options to protect my mental health. I sent the letter Monday evening. By Tuesday morning, HR asked me to join a Teams meeting. My manager and the head of HR were there, and they offered to pay out my notice period and end my employment immediately. They also confirmed that neither the CEO, his wife, nor any other company officer would contact me again, except through HR. They provided a separation agreement that seemed straightforward. My lawyer friend reviewed it, and I signed it that evening. Yesterday, I returned my equipment, said a quick goodbye, and left. This morning, all payments owed to me arrived in my account. With the extra 3 weeks of paid leave, my partner and I are now planning to head to Europe earlier, and my new employer just agreed to change the planned flights to make this possible. Update 2. The day after my second post, I formally finished up with my previous employer. A week later, we traveled to Europe with airfares for both paid by my new employer. They actually paid for a business class fare for me, which we used to buy 2 economy return tickets. My official work was starting after Easter, so we had almost 4 weeks as a vacation, and the pay in lieu was covering all the costs. We traveled around Europe, and I proposed to my partner, and she said yes. We spent Easter with some family, and Ireland started work on the 13th of April. Everything FIG was going really well. Plan was to build and market the next generation of the product developed by my previous employer. The new company had the money and resources to make it happen. I worked with their salespeople to work out a value proposition and pitch deck, which they would use to approach customers after the summer. My new employer had very good contacts and customers who are also based in Europe, and were confident they can convert them quickly. We planned out building a team in Australia and possibly even approaching some of my ex-colleagues. My task was to create a technical strategy and help create a more detailed business plan for approval by the board before they took their summer vacation in mid-June. We came back to Australia in mid-May. I hit the ground running and started working on the technical and business plans. I sent out a few feelers to old colleagues about meeting for a coffee and my new role, but there were no replies. Later that week, I got a ping from my old manager asking to meet about a coffee. I met with him, and this is where things started to go very wrong. My old colleagues who I had reached out to told him I had done so. They did not want to move. They felt uncomfortable talking to me, hence the coffee meeting. It turns out my previous employer had been purchased. The CEO has put together a deal where 3 of their largest customers created a company where they owned 30% each, and he owned 10%. This new company then purchased my previous employer. The sale price was just over 35 million Australian dollars. The option and shareholders got cashed out. The non-shareholding staff received bonuses of $5,000 to $30,000 depending on their length of services. Key staff have been offered 100% of their salary as a bonus per year if they stayed for 2 more years. He even engineered the options to be bought out without having to exercise them, so the options holders could claim the 50% CGT discount for holding them for more than a year. Message delivered nicely but firmly was none of my colleagues wanted to move. Please stop contacting them. My share would have been about $960,000 before tax. My first reaction was anger. Off the cuff, at the coffee meeting, I threatened to sue to get my share. This wrapped up the coffee quickly. I planned to look over my contracts later that weekend with my soon-to-be brother-in-law/lawyer. But before we could, I got an email from the in-house lawyer for my previous employer. Attached were screenshots of Slack conversations, phone logs, and copies of emails. The bottom line was the CEO had instructed my manager to do whatever it takes to get me to stay until the close and push this message repeatedly. They could not tell me the details as they were waiting for regulatory approval from 4 counties as 3 competitors were forming a joint venture with a supplier. That process had been happening for almost 9 months. Any leak or sign of impropriety would sink the whole deal. When I threatened legal action that changed everything, that would have sunk the deal, so they cut all contact quickly and moved on. The email said that considering all the information provided, my assertion is wrong, and if we commence legal action, they will use this email as evidence when they pursue costs. My fiance's brother agreed, and I replied back apologizing, completely withdrawing any allegations of impropriety and promising not to sue. I was devastated. I had left close to $1 million behind when I changed jobs. My plan for a new team was in tatters. To say I shut down is an understatement. I barely could think straight. I took a few mental health days and managed to find a privately funded psychologist. I'm slowly beginning to recover. Even after 6 weeks, even things like planning for the wedding reminds me of what it could have been. To say my relationship is at a low point is an understatement. This weekend, we went to buy a couch, and I almost ended up in tears because I thought about what we could afford to spend. To add insult to injury, I was told 2 weeks ago my board paper for the new venture has been delayed until after the summer break. Informally, I get the feeling the board is reevaluating the whole strategy as my previous company has taken the 3 biggest customers off the table. They're likely to lock in a few others too. Some of the smaller customers may still be an opportunity, but the financials are not nearly attractive with just them. I'm hoping for the best. I am barely functional enough to write this post now, and it took all my effort and a weekend to do that. Even though logically I still have a well-paying job with a good company, have good friends, and about to get married soon, I can't stop dwelling on what could have been. I'm still at the stage of blaming myself for the way I acted that resulted in this situation. Writing this has been cathartic and somewhat therapeutic. I am angry or sad all the time. I am sure this will pass eventually, but I think I will regret how I acted for the rest of my life. If I get the courage to revisit this post in the next few days, I should be able to answer any questions.